In this lecture, we're going to look at an alternative solution for controlling logic flow. Switch statements are another feature of PHP for performing a condition. There are a few differences, so let's get into them. In the PHP file, let's clear the contents. Next, add the switch keyword with a pair of parentheses. The biggest difference between if statements and switch statements are the condition. Conditions for if statements are flexible. We can compare values any way we'd like. For example, we can check if one value is greater than another. Alternatively, we can check for things like the length of a string or if the user is logged in. On the other hand, switch statements compare values for equality. If two values match, a portion of the code will be executed. Let's look at an example. Above the switch keyword, create a variable called payment status with a value of 1. It's common for developers to use numbers to represent the status of an action. In this example, we may want to store a user's payment status. The problem with this value is that numbers aren't descriptive. We wouldn't output a number to the user. Instead, we may want to output a friendlier message. This is the perfect case for a switch statement. Inside the parentheses, add the payment status variable. The switch statement accepts a value. The value does not need to be a Boolean. It can be an integer, float, or string. Next, inside a pair of curly brackets, we must add a keyword called case. After the case keyword, we must add a value to compare it with a value from the switch statements. Let's add 1. Afterward, we can add a colon character. Code written after this character will be executed whenever the value from this case matches the value passed into the switch statement. Let's call the variable dump function with the following value, success. If the values match, this means the payment was a success. Let's add another case. This time, we'll compare the variable with the number 2. If the values match, we'll call the variable dump function with the following value, pending. You'll notice I'm indenting the code. This is not necessary but recommended. It helps with readability. Indenting your code helps associate lines of code with a specific case. What if the variable doesn't match our cases? We can add a default case by adding the default keyword. Similar to before, we can add a colon character after this keyword. Any code written after this character will be executed when the other cases fail. Let's output the following message, unknown. To recap, switch statements attempt to compare values for equality. It doesn't try to compare values that are less than or greater than each other. Within the switch statements, we must provide a value to match within its various cases. We can add as many case statements as we'd like. If a match can't be found, the default case is executed. Here's where things become slightly bizarre. All messages from our cases have been executed. But why? Whenever PHP comes across a match with a case, it'll execute all lines of code written after it. This includes lines of code written after the case. PHP refers to this feature as a fall-through strategy. We're responsible for instructing PHP to stop running code. This process can be interrupted by adding a keyword called break. After each variable dump function, add this keyword. We don't have to add the break keyword to the default case. It's redundant to add it in, since it's the end of the switch statement. After adding this keyword, things are different. Only the success message appears. I know this might seem strange, but there's a good reason for this behavior. Currently, we're limited to matching a single value with the expression from the switch statement. What if we want multiple values to trigger a block of code? That's completely possible thanks to the fall-through strategy implemented in switch statements. For example, after the second case, add another case for the number 3. Next, let's update the payment status variable to 2. As you can see, the payment was denied. Under the second case, there isn't any code to execute. However, we're not breaking the case either. PHP continues to fall through the next line of code. By not doing so, the message from the third case gets executed. This behavior allows us to add multiple cases to produce the same outcome, which may come in handy. In my opinion, I prefer to use if statements. It's completely possible to compare two values. However, from time to time, you may come across switch statements. It's good to know how they work. Before moving on, there's one more thing I want to mention. The types don't have to match. For example, I'll wrap the variable's value with a pair of quotes to create a string. Believe it or not, our code will work as before. The same message gets outputted. PHP performs type juggling before comparing values. The values do not have to be the same type. As long as they loosely match, the case will pass. That's something you should know when working with switch statements. If you require strict comparisons, you might want to consider using if statements. It isn't possible with switch statements. In the next lecture, let's look at one more feature of performing conditions.